That's kind of weak there. You know, after that recent audacity, the audacity of the lesbian seagull, the Mexican lesbian seagull, the member of the Kulikitaka. An emergency C-section had I removed him from my life. After that recent bullshit, I was actually trying to think, what is something else different I could do with my channel? So here's a new series. We'll see how long it will go. Let's talk about the most interesting people that I ever met in my short time in fighting games. And this is a story about some people that I've told on stream. I feel like I've told this story a few times, but on YouTube I've only told the story once, right? And this is I really think this is an interesting story, right? So let's see who we're going to talk about today. And one of the most interesting people I ever met in the fighting game community during my time in video games was this dude right here. Wait, is the brush on? That dude right there. You see that dude right there? Drac Joel. So most people probably don't know this dude unless you've actually played Tekken or Soul Calibur, but he was actually a pretty well-known player, I guess, in Tekken back in the day. You know, he used to win tournaments. Man, he was even traveling around, and he won some tournament in Japan before. He won a tournament in Germany when he was traveling before. And the most interesting story I'm going to tell him about is like the Soul Calibur story. But before I actually get into all of this, who else is in this picture? Do I have anything to say about Travis? The most interesting thing I have to say about Travis, probably that maybe people in the video game community know, is that Fetz's girlfriend wanted to fuck him. I don't know if they ever did anything, but it's been so long ago. No one cares. I don't think they actually did anything, but I remember Fetz's girlfriend, Trinity, actually wanted to bang him. I don't think they actually did anything, though. Poor Andy. I actually feel bad. Andy, you know, I don't want to talk about too many illegal things here, even though I guess it's been so many years, but Andy, I don't know if you can see him here. He's kind of like a jock kind of dude. Good looking dude, right? And man, I always feel bad for Andy because I don't want to say who it was in the video game community, but a certain member of the video game community got him hooked on really hardcore drugs. And to be honest, I actually don't even know if Andy is alive anymore. I know I had seen him, you know, because when I used to know Andy, he was more of like a jock kind of dude. And you know, I then saw him maybe so many years later, and he was skinny, and you could see it in his arms, like heroin and all that kind of shit. And I always thought it was weird, and it shows kind of like the irresponsibility, I think, of a lot of people in the video game community. And I'm like, don't you guys feel bad for Andy? Don't you feel bad that these other members of the community got him hooked on drugs, and these other members of the community that got him hooked on these hardcore drugs, you know what I mean? They actually had people that basically financially supported them. It didn't matter how many times they got in trouble with drugs, right? You know, they kept supporting them, you know, whereas he did not have that support. And like I said, I actually don't even know if Andy is alive anymore. And I remember people in the community, they're just like, well, it was his choice. No one put a gun to his head to make him do drugs. And I always thought that was really fucked up, that people just were like, oh, whatever, he's a drug addict now, who cares? And it's like, you don't feel bad or guilty about that so many members of the community did that to him? And really a sad story, but anyway. Oh, and who's that guy in the middle? Man, look at that 16-year-old Clayton. I know I look older there. I guess that's my game. People thought I looked older when I was younger, and now people think I'm younger when I look older. But and we'll talk a little bit about Matt here too during the story, but the specific story is about Joel Drac. That dude right there. How did I meet Joel Drac, right? Joel Drac. So I originally met him. I had won a Street Fighter tournament. Yes, I've won other tournaments besides Guilty Gear. Yes, I'm not wearing pants today. I took off my pants while I'm relaxing before I get ready to relax for the night. But how did I meet him? So I had won a Street Fighter tournament, and I remember I saw this long-haired dude, and he was like known in the community because he was a known Tekken player, right? And he's kind of like, he looks different. He doesn't look like your average nerd. He had super long hair, black hair when I originally met him, I think. And he's like, oh, hey, people are just introducing me. This is Joel. This is Drac. He's that Tekken guy that's winning a lot right now. And he's like, wait, you are the person that won this Street Fighter tournament right now? He gave me kind of like a shit look or something like that. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, are you sure? You know, he was kind of like jokey about it. I'm like, yes, it was me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that was how we originally met. And fast forward to Soul Calibur, and this is where the story I think really gets interesting in the fighting game community. Soul Calibur 2 specifically. So if you recall, Soul Calibur 2, and this is a crazy, to me, this is a crazy kind of lore, very bizarre lore in fighting games, because I don't think a lot of people talk about it, but I saw it firsthand. So in Soul Calibur 2, if you recall, the best in the world was generally considered the Chicago guys. And even at EVO, I think it ended up being Flo from Chicago and Dan the Knight at EVO that year. It was like 2003, 2004. Maybe it was 2004, I forget. Anyway. Chicago was considered really good. You know, like the best in the world, generally speaking. It was the hot spot for Soul Calibur 2. And it was because WC Maxi was actually the guy testing the game, right? And so all the Chicago guys got to play it early. So of course they were way ahead of everybody. And then they had that super battle opera where Chicago like basically destroyed everybody. It was just everyone from Chicago. I think it was like Fetz and H-Bomb and like some other guys, and they just all destroyed Japan, right? Again, was that how much of that was because that they all got to play the game early? I don't know. I know WC Maxi supposedly was not allowed to enter tournaments, but these other guys, even though they got to play it, you know, from this guy, were still allowed to enter tournaments. But anyway, so the story happens. The really interesting story about Joel is, if people think about me, like a lot of people want to say that I play a lot of video games. They think I play much more than I actually do. Thought that I practiced all day, blah, 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 whatever. Not true, okay? I was able to win tournaments. Like I said, I am confident creatively wise and like raw skill wise, but I've never had that, you know, super killer instinct. And I physically can't even play like that even if I wanted to. But you know, someone else who I saw that could do this, or at least that it would seem to me whenever I saw him, is Drac Joel. Now, I got to be honest, this guy even lived with me, and I'm skipping ahead here for a little bit. This guy actually lived with me for a few months. I can't recall ever seeing this dude practice in my entire life, right? Not just that few months he lived with me, just whatever in the tournament scene. And I have seen Drac go to so many tournaments and win them. And I'm like, does he even play? And I would ask friends that knew him better. And I'm like, does this guy even play to do this? And people are like, no, Joel's not really a person that practices a lot, actually, right? And I remember, so Michigan, where I was from at the time, you know, we actually had some pretty good people at Soul Calibur. Like this Matt guy here, Matt was doing well in a lot of Chicago, or Matt had done well in Chicago tournaments. He was obviously winning a lot of Michigan tournaments as well. And Matt, even at one time, I don't remember if it was Soul Calibur 4 or Soul Calibur 5, but Matt was actually, if you know, I guess, you know, how much credits you put into online, Matt's accounts in Soul Calibur 4 and 5, or one or the other, was generally the best guy online. So if you know who I'm talking about, that was actually Matt's account. And these are Soul Calibur 4, Soul Calibur 5. He was the #1 ranked player for most of the game's lifespan, actually. But anyway, we're talking about Soul Calibur 2, but the point is, he had done well for himself in Soul Calibur 2 as well. So anyway, we were going to Chicago, right? And when we went to this Chicago tournament, and this is crazy to me. This is crazy to me just because you think that these guys were the best in the world at the time, right? Generally considered. We went to this Chicago tournament, right? We all drove down there. And it was crazy because we got to Chicago. Fetz was housing us. And then Fetz didn't have anything for us to play, so we didn't get to practice beforehand or anything. And I can say, generally speaking, that trip, the Chicago guys, I don't want to say that they were assholes, but they were quite unfriendly to us for them housing us. Chicago guys were generally, I'm not going to say they were assholes, but they were at least quite unfriendly and curt to us, despite them housing us for coming to their tournament. Whatever, right? And I remember we were even trying to like drive to the arcade for the tournament, and they purposely sped up because they wanted to like get us lost or something like that. And I remember Joel was like cool about it though, and Joel was very cocky because Joel was I don't know if I could say he's very cocky, but Joel was too cool for school, right? Not in a bad way, though. Not in a bad way, though. I legitimately do think Joel was too cool for these guys, basically, right? And let me just say, I'm actually not good friends with Joel. So anything I'm saying about Joel, and I'm going to tell you a story, me and Joel are not good friends at all, trust me, because we are both very, one of those kind of things, maybe we have similar personalities and we are our own kind of vibe, not with the video game community. We're very different than a lot of people in the video game community. Maybe that's why we kind of didn't super get along. Not that we hated each other, but anyway, I just remember the Chicago guys. They drove really fast, so we would try to get lost and lose our way to the tournament. I remember Joel was like, don't worry. He was like, they're just doing that to fuck us up or something like that. So he said something like that, dude. And we got to this tournament. And it's crazy to me because, again, these guys were the best in the world. Joel was just destroying these guys, dude. No joke. All these guys, like, you know, Flo, H-Bomb, Fets, all these guys, people that were considered the best in the world, they were destroying these guys. And I don't remember who eventually beat him. I think Joel finally, you know, they got to the finals, and then Joel did lose in the finals, 2-1 or whatever it was, right? I don't remember which guy he lost to, but he lost to one of them, and he beat the other two. And the Chicago guys were pissed, and they immediately wanted another tournament, dude, because they wanted a chance to beat him, dude. This is when they were considered the best in the world, dude, right? And Joel was just like, he's like, you guys can have it, but I'm not going to enter it again. And they wanted it, though. They had another tournament, and they thought he was going to enter, and he's like, I'm not entering. I'm done for the weekend. You guys had your chance or whatever. And I don't know why that was just so cool to me. And I'm sure that's like probably a weird lure that people really don't know if they're not in the Tekken community or Soul Calibur community. That's when these guys were considered the best in the world. And Drac just went there and basically destroyed them all, besides one of them. Again, I don't remember who he lost to exactly, but that's a crazy story about Joel. Other kind of interesting stories to tell about this guy that I could say is we were... So at the time, Soul Calibur 2, remember if I was telling you about this guy. This guy was considered one of the other best people in Michigan, right? And me and him have gone through different phases in our life where I haven't talked to him in years now because he did become a complete Looney Tune from drugs. Who knows if he still is now? I don't know. But eventually I was just like, you know what, dude, you're so far gone. You can only, you know... Sometimes when you have that druggy friend, there's good times when the friend is kind of fucked up all the time and they're a good time to be around. Then there's other times where they're the bad kind of thing. And eventually they just got to the point that there was only the bad and they never wanted to take responsibilities for their actions. And it was just kind of like, dude, you are so far gone. It's just over. He didn't even fucking remember. Like, dude, he thought I knew him. He thought I was... The story's not about him, but he was telling some crazy stories that weren't even true about me. And he thought he knew me in middle school, and it was just really weird. He was just off the wonkers. But the point is, this guy was very cocky, though, right? He was kind of I would consider him a fake alpha male, if you know what I mean. Like, some people think that I'm an alpha male, right? Because girls like me, whatever, girls want to fuck me, whatever it is. But I am a fake alpha male in that I fake looking cool, but I'm not actually alpha male. He's kind of like the cocky, not alpha male, but he would tell people he's an alpha male. That's kind of how I would describe him, right? But anyway, so he was super cocky because he was good at Soul Calibur 2, right? And he would always win all the tournaments unless Joel was there. Joel would be the one guy that beat him. Well, anyway, story goes, so I remember Joel actually came to live with me for a few months, right? Now, unfortunately, for what it's worth, me and Joel, again, we have different kind of personalities, right? Or we have, we're both kind of lone wolf kind of people, maybe, for a better lack of a better term, doing our own thing. And so we didn't really click in that way. And we didn't really hang out, even though he lived with me for a little bit. And I can be kind of like ambiverted, I guess you would call it. Like sometimes, you know, like we were talking about that recent Anime Illuminati interview I did. If you could see that interview, I was lickety split. I was being jokey, I was being funny, socially calibrated, whatever you want to call it, because I knew that's what people wanted. And if you get me going, I can be the life of a party. But a lot of other times, you know what I mean, I'm kind of introverted, right? I still am a nerd. So I think there was one of those things that maybe Joelle saw me out in public, and you know what I mean? I can be, if there's a good vibe, I can be very jokey in the community, right? Around other people, right? But when he lived with me, I think he saw that I can be pretty introverted too. And we're both kind of lone wolf vibes. So we were not really crossing paths. And another thing too is right when he started living with me is right when I first started to know that something was wrong with me sick as I was getting sicker and sicker, right? So that was kind of another problem too, us hanging out, because when I was first getting sick, I was getting sick a lot and really tired. And I'm going off on a tangent here. But anyway, so he had lived with me a few months. And a funny story is that people would use my computer, right? Because we had one computer. And I remember sometimes I was waking up and there'd be porno on it that I hadn't downloaded or anything. And I remember one time, again, you'll see where I'm going with this story, is that I woke up with this porno and I'm like, maybe my brother downloaded it. Maybe someone else downloaded it. What is this, right? And so I clicked it. And let's just say these girls were rock hard. These girls were given some D, if you know what I mean. And I'm like, oh God, what is my brother doing downloading this shit? Maybe he thought he was downloading something else and it was some like, transgender porn or some bullshit like that. So I deleted lickety split, right? Well, anyway, eventually, after a few months, Joelle moved out. So the funny story about this is, if you recall, I've told this story a few times on my stream. At the time, the Matt guy on the left was actually asking me, he was like, hey, Clayton, he's like, you know what? He's like, have you ever thought about being gay? And I was like, what do you mean, think about being gay? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, I mean, we're not really going to be gay, but we're just going to be gay for attention. And I'm like, no, what the fuck are you talking about, dude, right? And we talked about it for a little bit. I'm like, yo, dude, if you're gay, I don't give a fuck. He's like, no, dude, I'm not gay. I'm just going to do it for attention. And I'm like, dude, if you're going to have sex with a guy, you're gay. I'm sorry. Do whatever you want to do, but a dick up the butt is a dick up the butt. And me and friends even actually have a saying like that. We say dick up the butt is a dick up the butt, because it's what I told him. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, bro, but a dick up the butt is a dick up the butt. And he's like, yeah, I guess, or something like that. So we had this conversation one night, and I never thought about it ever again. Anyway, lo and behold, a few months after, so Joelle moved out a few months after that summer. Lo and behold, and my time frame might be a little fucked up, a guy that's not in the picture messages me. And he's like, Clayton, and he's like, how did you accept that you're gay? And I was like, I'm not gay, dude. What are you talking about? And he's like, no, you can tell me, how do you accept that you're gay? How are you so free hanging out with all these girls and you can hang out with all these guys and you're just doing whatever? You're so young and you know what I mean? You joke about anything and you don't even care that you're gay. And I'm like, dude, I'm not gay. What the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, oh, shit. And so he basically, again, I forget exactly the conversation, but he basically let the cat out of the bag that he's gay. And I'm like, oh, so you're gay. And he's like, oh, fuck. And he's like, well, not. He's like, okay, well, I was telling you because I thought you were gay. And to be honest with you, I was just Joel's first experience. I asked him if he wanted me to suck him off, so I sucked him off. And I was like, whoa, shit. And I'm like, okay, bro. You know what I mean? And he's like, are you sure you're not gay? Because really, I was just with Joelle and I just sucked him off or something like that. And I'm like, I'm not gay, but that's okay. But then, boom, it clicked in my head. And, after that conversation, I was like that, what is that? Like the Brazilian girl math meme? I'm like, 10 plus 5 minus 4 pieces. It's like all going to my head. And I'm like, oh, shit. It was Joelle was downloading the gay porn on my computer. And then, wait a second. And then after that, I realized me and Joelle hadn't talked. And then I realized we had a falling out because Joelle thought that I talked Matt out of being gay with them. And there was going to be this clique of homosexual top player action, winning tournaments, after the tournament, buttholes, dick sucked. Anyway, so me and Joelle, we actually didn't talk for a long time after that. And I had never realized that until me and that one guy had that conversation. I'm like, oh, shit. Once I did the math problem, like, he probably thinks that I talked him out of being gay. And I had no fucking idea. Now, is Matt gay? I don't know. I mean, we've all had our suspicions. I haven't talked to the guy in a year. But, I mean, I could tell you some stories. He was under suspicion. Okay? He was under suspicion from a lot of people. The dude has tried to get naked in front of me before, very strangely. I don't know what he was doing. You know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know. But, I don't know. Who knows? You know what? I mean, me, Travis, and all these other guys have been at dinner before. And we're like, dude, is Matt gay? What is going on with that guy sometime, dude? I'm like, we don't know. It's like, dude, it's okay if you're gay. Just admit it. So we're like, if you're bisexual, we don't care. So I don't know whatever happened with him. I haven't talked to the guy in years. You know what I mean? But, well, you know. But anyway, yeah, so me and Joel, we didn't talk for years after that. And anyway, the point is, I always just felt like Joel was a very interesting person I met during the community, because I always thought it's a little asterisk mark on the community. And I always think it's funny because if you think about my time in the community, there's just like this little span of period, and, you know, people can act like it didn't happen. But my first year of disability, dude, I won almost every single fucking tournament I ever entered for an entire year. You know what I mean? Like, I won more tournaments than most people have ever been to. Okay? And it's this little asterisk mark, you know, for so many year period span in the community that I was in the community, whatever, going to tournaments. And people want to act like it didn't happen. You know, I don't even know how the fuck you deny all the tech. Like I said, there's no one that has done what I've done tech-wise in fucking fighting games ever. It's not even fucking close, okay? That's not even an asterisk mark. That's just, this is still going on, okay? But tournament-wise, yeah, there's a blip of time, a little bit of history. It's like, who's this Clayton guy that's winning all these tournaments? Let's just pretend it didn't happen. But Joel is another guy that I think is interesting because, man, I've seen him do it. I don't know if this guy ever practiced. He lived with me, asterisk mark, when he lived with me, I was really sick, and, you know, I wasn't doing a lot anyway, because I didn't realize how sick I was at the time, that I was really getting full-blown into everything that was going on. But, you know, it's definitely interesting because you're like, man, this guy, and I'm telling you, people knew, when we would travel together, people knew who he was. Again, I'm not well-versed on Tekken, but, you know, back in the day, if they knew Tekken, people knew who Drac was. And even after, you know, years after I left the community, I've heard about Drac. He won some tournament in Japan. He won some tournament in Germany, just randomly travel, randomly plays. I just think it's interesting, right? And I always thought that was a very interesting, one of the most interesting people I ever met in the community. Anyway, if you like these videos, maybe I'll do some other most interesting people I've ever met in the video game community. If you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support if you want to.